Here we are again, hearing the words of wisdom. Let it be in the Wisdom Factory. Hello and welcome again to the Wisdom Factory, which is a forum for open-minded people like you and us, who have knowledge, experience, and wisdom to share with the world. I'm Heidi Hornlein.
And I'm Mark Davenport from Paradiso Integrale, thepowerofrelationship.com.
Our topics will cover all areas of human experience. We invite people who not only have interesting things to say about the topics and about their lives, but who have also an evolved perspective on themselves and on what they are doing. They are all inspired in contributing to the creation of a better world by helping people to gain a better understanding and perspective on what is happening in the world and in their own lives, and what they can do to contribute to resolve the many, many problems we are facing in this time of history.
And this is our 4th episode, and it belongs to the category Gender. The title is Men Are Good. But before we introduce our guest, a few words about us, Mark and Heidi. We both were attracted to integral theory many years ago, well, several years ago anyway, which literally changed our lives, not only in the understanding of the world and of ourselves, but also by giving us literally the possibility to get to know each other, to meet, to marry, and among other things, to create this show. Yeah. We're counselors and coaches, more of that in the details section, and we run a retreat and guest house, Paradiso Integrale, in Umbria, here in Italy, where you are very welcome to stop by. We have lots of room.
Indeed. So, to lead into the topic of today, I wanted to state that since women stepped up and claimed their liberation in the 60s, men more and more got confused about themselves, what their role is in life and their worth as a human being, as a husband or a partner, and so on. In their attempt to free themselves, women demonized men as the oppressors and the only cause of their suffering. And I had a period in my life where I did exactly the same thing. I hated men. And still I loved them, and I always came back to them. So today, to be born as a boy in some environment is really bad, like being something just tolerated and seen often as inferior. It is time to come to a balance and consider what reality is. It is time for women to give up to defining themselves by relationships to men. I did it all my life, and I finally need to give it up too. And it's also time for men to become whole as human beings and to claim their rightful place in human society.
Today we have invited Tom Golden. Hello, Tom.
Hey there. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Tom is an expert in men's issues. He's written several books to help men to grow up into this new way of being. The Way Men Heal, this is also the title of one of his books, is different from the way women heal, for example. And as a public speaker and clinical social worker, Tom brings this news to men and women alike. Men are good. Maybe not all men, but as a species, they are just as good as anybody else, which somehow seems a strange thing to say. And men have to, like women have done in recent decades, have to learn to overcome the restrictions and conditioning which patriarchy had put on everybody. So, Tom, would you like to add anything here before we ask you some questions?
No, I'm ready to start.
Ready to go.
Ready to go, baby.
Okay. Well, you're a specialist in men's issues, and so I'm wondering, how long ago did you decide that this was something that needed attention? And how did you decide to go out and spread that message with men?
I came in through the back door, really. You know, I went to graduate school in the mid-1970s, and I got out of graduate school and tried to get a job. At that time, jobs were scarce. It took me about a year to find a job. I finally found a job at this place down in Washington, D.C. that was for people who were dying or grieving. I said, I can do it. They hired me. So I go there, and the first thing I notice is, uh-oh, all the therapists were women. There was like 17 therapists there, and all of them were women, and one guy, me. So what happened was, you know, as people would come in to be sent out to the different therapists, who would they send all the men to? They'd send them to me. You know, because Golden's a man, he can figure them out. He knows what to do, because the women didn't want to work with men, and I found out quickly why they didn't want to work with them. Because I'd sit with these men, and, you know, these were men who were very, you know, traumatized. And I'd try and make eye contact, right? Make good eye contact. Because that's what they taught me to do in graduate school. But do men like eye contact? No. Not in the same way that women do, particularly when it's eye contact with another man. Because what does that mean to men? To men, eye contact with another man means competition. It means confrontation. It means put them up, pal. We're going to go at it, right? So here I am. I'm hoping I'm going to try and help these guys relax and open up. What I'm doing is I'm making them more tense. And there's oodles of other things that I did at the time that I'd been taught to do in graduate school that simply didn't work. Because they worked really well with women. The women I worked with, it was easy. I liked it. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, these 17 women are right. You know, there's something wrong with these guys. Because what I'd been taught was not working. So I had a bunch of choices then. I could either just grit my teeth and keep going, or I could try and find out why men seem to be different. And I bumped into this anthropological research on cross-cultural grief. And this research was of tribal cultures, indigenous cultures, and it was fascinating. But they had something that woke me up. What they did was they showed me that almost every time in these indigenous cultures, the men were given something to do after a death. Either they dug the grave, they built the coffin, they would take care of the ritual, they'd care for the guests. They had things they had to do. Whereas the women, they would often give this place to emote. And it started me thinking,
this is interesting.
that's what's happening here. And I realized, oh my gosh, we have subcontracted all of the things to do after a death. We've subcontracted. Someone else digs the grave. Someone else builds the coffin. Someone else gives the eulogy sometimes. So men are left in funeral homes tapping their feet with nothing to do. And then it started to dawn on me, uh-oh, we've really made a mistake. And instead of looking at the men and trying to make eye contact and to talk about their feelings and to talk about the past, I started asking them more about the things that they were doing. And that's when I woke up.
You know, Tom, this is very, very interesting because we women think when men go out doing something in difficult situations that they are avoiding the grief.
Yes,
you know?
Which is exactly what I thought at the time.
Yeah.
But when I saw all this happening with the indigenous people, it woke me up. And then I started asking the men about what they were doing, and I started getting excited because the men would tell me what they were doing. It was easy to talk about that. It was simple to discuss, shoulder to shoulder, talking about the kinds of things they were doing to help themselves, actions they would do. And I started realizing that a key to men's healing is action. And most of us have completely missed that. And you're absolutely right. You know, the women will expect the men to do things like they do. And of course they should bond by sharing their feelings. But we know now that that's simply not the case. You know, the research of Shelly Taylor helps us understand that a little bit more. And should we go on and talk about Taylor a little bit?
No, let me first ask you or say something, because I think it is so important that women know that. Because we always blame our guys because they don't
Heidi,
react.
the workshops that I do, the end of the day, there's always about 5% of the women who will come up to me and say, Tom, thank you so much for this. I can't wait to go home and try this out on my husband. You know, because the women are excited. They're excited to see that, whoa, I may have missed this. Because once women know that men heal in a different way, they can get close to them in so much easier fashion. So much easier for them to get close. This is what women want. Women want to get close. And they can't figure out, why am I not close to him? And now she knows, to get close, go out and shoot baskets with him.
Well, you're talking to one of the 5% right here, Tom.
And 5% of what?
Of the women who come up after you talk and say, I'm going to go home and try that.
Well, good. Hopefully today we'll get the tools to try.
Maybe somebody had told it before, but it dawned to me that we women put so much pressure on men by expecting that they elaborate their inner world in the same way as we do. And it's really... And then the other thing, I think the more evolved the man is, the more he is able to speak about his feelings. But this is a long way to go for men, I guess, until they really...
The more men meditate, the more they're going to be in touch with what's inside. And it is easier then to be able to be in touch with that kind of stuff. Meditation is a boon for everything. You know, my teacher used to tell me over and over again, he'd say 3 things you need to do. Meditate, meditate, meditate. Everything else, throw it out the window. You know? An ounce of practice is worth tons of theories, you would say. And
so meditation is an action which is not very active. So it is already a sort of education to bring them back from the outer world into the inner world, isn't it?
Yes.
I guess that's why meditation for men, say, in Tibet is traditionally, staring at a wall for 15 years. Get it inside you.
Of course, meditation is much more than that. It's a struggle. It's a struggle with the mind. It's a struggle, a competition, really, with the thoughts. They always want to intrude. They always want to pop in. Pop, 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 pop. Oh, I forgot to do this. Oh, I'm not good enough at that. Blah, 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 blah. And that keeps us then from this peacefulness, where once we get a certain level of peacefulness, the grief and the feelings are just simple. They're simplified.
We have a comment here from Margarita, and she said, wow, if I only knew this thing about eye contact.
Well, good, Margarita. I hope that we'll tell you some more things that you'll find helpful. Because men are truly very different.
Wait, he has a question too. Here's a question. How does a man want his woman to approach a sensitive issue?
Carefully is the one-word answer, very carefully. But it's important to note that not all men are the same and not all women are the same. The science now tells us very clearly 17% of women are going to be more like men. And 17% of men are going to be more like women. Why, you say? Why is that? It's boiling down to biology. 2 months in utero. 2 months in utero, the mother creates a flood of testosterone. In the baby boys, 83% of baby boys get this flood. That flood changes their brain into what we're calling a male brain or a masculine brain or a systemizing brain. A brain that's more comfortable in looking at systems and looking at, okay, how do I impact this system? If I take something out, what happens? If I put something in, what happens? Their whole psyche, their way of looking at things is in terms of systems. And the female brain, which is the default brain, is a relational brain. So instead of being systems-oriented, it's relationally oriented. Now, this is, we're making it binary here in order to make a point. It's never binary. And like we've said, 17% of women are going to have the masculine brain. 17% of men are going to have the feminine brain. And this is why, for so long, people have scratched their head and says, there's really not such a thing as gender differences. I've got an Aunt Sally who wants to play linebacker for the Packers. And I've got an Uncle Mort who loves romance novels. There's no difference between men and women. But when you look at the biology of things, when you look at the testosterone in utero, you start to see that the difference is in our biology more so than our sex.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is very interesting.
It's fascinating. It's we're learning more and more every day. But one of the fascinating things that we know now is that this testosterone flood has all sorts of impacts every place. But one of the things it does is the bigger the flood you get, the shorter your index finger is in your right hand in comparison to your ring finger.
Longer.
Yeah, Mark, you have a female pattern, it looks like. And hold yours up, Heidi, let's see. Now you have almost a male pattern. It's hard to tell. If you look at my right hand, you'll see that this index finger is shorter than this guy.
In our relationship, I'm often more the systematic person, the rational person, and he's more dreaming and so on.
Yes.
I'm dreaming right now, actually.
What's that?
I'm dreaming right now, actually.
I think we're probably all dreaming in one sense or another.
Yes, we are. But yes,
but
that sounds like
people want to know more about this, they can Google 2D, 4D, which is the code word basically for the research that's been done on this finger relationship to the testosterone in utero.
Mm-hmm.
So 2D, 4D, second digit, fourth digit. And it is mind-blowing stuff. You know, we know now that people who have the feminine brain are going to be more likely to like frilly dresses, to like pink, and to be identified with feminine sorts of things. People who have the more masculine pattern are going to, no. So that's 17% of women who got this testosterone flood are going to be what we call in America tomboys. Mm-hmm. You know, they're going to be more masculine. They're going to be more interested in systems and less interested in relationship. Mm-hmm. And again, this is a continuum. This is not a binary thing where one is one way and the other is another.
Yeah. And I want to bring into the discussion the question of evolution of self, because I was very much, as an example, very much onto rational mind and systems and so on. And actually, by getting to know Mark, he sort of forced me to recognize that I'm feminine. And I'm now developing much more my feminine qualities, which sort of were somewhere in the background. So
yes, yeah, and it sounds very similar to my wife and my relationship, where she has a very strong masculine side. I have a fairly strong feminine side, and through our relationship, we've both been able to bless the other side in each other. You know, which is it's a blessing. It's a wonderful thing.
It's a nice.
Both sides are good.
You
know, both sides are good. We need to learn to love the men and the women. We need to learn to love the very feminine men and the very masculine women. Love everybody. Why not?
But one thing I've noticed in politics, and I'm go to the extremes of the Scandinavian countries. I was watching a documentary on Norway a while ago, and asking educators there, you know, what were the differences between men and women, boys and girls in their case, and they denied any differences. That any differences were strictly cultural, conditioned, you know, nothing innate. It was sort of the dogma of this postmodern generation in Scandinavia. It was really, they were confronted with all kinds of evidence that wasn't so, that there were all kinds of innate differences as well as the cultural ones, but they would just deny it. They couldn't see it. Really intelligent, well-educated people. No.
Yes, yes, and we have the same thing in the United States.
Yes,
you know, very, very well-educated people are still thinking that our differences are based on our socialization only.
Yeah.
And while socialization plays a big part in it, biology plays a part too. Oh my gosh, testosterone is just so important. You know, we know now that because of the 50 years you've talked about, where you know people are thinking straight line socialization, they've neglected really looking at testosterone. But we know now from the Transmen piece. Do you know about Transmen? Trans men are biological women
Yes.
who decide that they're actually men in a woman's body, and they take huge doses of testosterone in order to literally transform themselves into men. And the writings of these people is absolutely fascinating from my perspective, because they talk about the shift that goes on in the way they process emotions. When testosterone hits, many of them say the same things. First thing is, tears dry up. I don't have as many tears now that I'm taking a lot of testosterone. Isn't that fascinating? And we know now that little boys, when they're 6 years old, can cry like a banshee, but when they hit 12, the tears dry up.
Yep.
And it's related to our biology. As the testosterone goes up, the boys lack the capacity then to cry. And of course, the other thing about crying for men is that a man's tear ducts are larger than a woman's. And because of that, he tends to hold more of the tears in his eyes. So when men are very sad, you'll see their eyes glisten, but you don't see the tears rolling down their face. When women are very sad, you'll see them boom, 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 rolling down the face. You know?
No.
So the one thing is that testosterone impacts the tears. The second thing is it impacts our ability to articulate our emotions when we're in the midst of feeling them. The trans men talk about this process where instead of being able to say, oh, I'm feeling so such and such, they go, I'm feeling what? And boy, when I heard that, I said, welcome to my world. Because as a man, it's more difficult to process these emotions. It takes a longer time to process them and to put them into a verbal form. You know?
But do you think they can train that? Also, the hormone state is different?
They can train the hormonal state or train
No,
the
train to learn to process their emotions and to give names to them.
Those are fantastic things. We can train ourselves to do just about anything. You know, so yes, I think men can overcome this, but I think it's really important that we realize that this is a limitation that men have. They're not going to be as articulate about their emotions. The next thing is, the trans men say, when I was upset, I would always go to a girlfriend. We'd talk about this stuff and I'd feel a little better. Now that I've taken testosterone, I don't have that desire at all. Instead, she says, or he says, I think I'd rather just hit something.
Here is, can I bring up another comment from Man? He says, isn't some of the masculinity seen in a woman a way to deal with the glass ceiling?
You know, I don't know what to say to that, except I think that's apples and oranges. I think the masculinity in men and women and the femininity in men and women is a biological and social event. If he's saying that women need to become more masculine in order to try and get into the job force and succeed, yes, I would definitely agree with that, because it demands that. You know, the job force demands that people compete, and you know, this is the masculine side. Testosterone helps you want to compete. Estrogen helps you want to connect and cooperate. You know?
There was a phase of feminism, I think, where it was kind of exaggerated masculinity, where women really put down traditional roles and you know, tried to be supermen when they got out into the world, and exaggerate some of these characteristics, even to the point of, you know, dressing in suits to go to work and so on.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope they retreated from that a bit.
We have another comment here from Mel. I didn't know that men have larger tear ducts.
Yes,
I didn't know either.
No.
Yes, they do have larger ones, but again, human variability is huge. There may be some men with smaller tear ducts and some women with bigger. So we're talking a bell-shaped curve here. We're not talking about all one and all the other.
Yeah.
But if we can get back to Shelly Taylor, she's really important and critical for us to understand just at the beginning. And Taylor is a researcher at UCLA, and she found out in the early 2000s that the stress research that had been done only with male subjects. everything. So everything you've ever read about stress that came out of the U.S. is based on men.
Probably college sophomore men.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's probably college men, a couple of freshmen and juniors thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Taylor found that all this research was just done on the men, so she said, look, we need to study just women. So Taylor studied women who are stressed, and she found some amazing things. What she found was women don't fight or flight. Women tend and befriend. Women tend and befriend. When women are stressed, they move towards other people. When men are stressed, they move either to action or to inaction. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first bifurcation of men and women with stress, is that the women will be more likely to move towards people and to talk. The men were more likely to move towards doing something or become passive and inactive and quiet. And when they're quiet and inactive, they grind on it. They think about it repeatedly, over and over and over again.
Only for a few decades have I been doing that. Yeah. Yeah.
Grinding on it?
Yeah, grinding on it. Right.
Yeah, I've had a couple of decades myself with that. And it's not a bad thing. You know, anybody who's had a little boy, you know, a son, they can think back to when he was 12, 13 years old. He'd get upset. What would he do? He'd go to his room and slam the door, right? And he'd hold himself up, and he'd sit there, and he'd think, and he'd think, and he'd think. And he'd tell that story in his mind's eye. He'd tell it over and over and over again, right?
Mm-hmm.
He'd come out later and be a different person. Why? Because he was able to process it with his mind, through his inaction, through pulling back just by himself. And men do this repeatedly with their grief. Men will move towards an inactive place where they simply think about what happened. And it's a very valid form of healing. You know, the way we, in the U.S. anyway, the primary idea is that women heal through crying and talking about it, and men should too.
Yeah. We have another comment here from Mary, and she
Yes.
said, what causes women, it has gone away, let me see.
What causes women?
Yeah.
That is exactly the question that Taylor asked herself, because she couldn't figure out why this would be, because men and women have a very similar chemical response to stress. So she was thinking, why on earth would women do one thing and men do the other? And she found out something very important. Oxytocin. Ever heard of oxytocin?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the cuddle hormone. When you get this oxytocin stuff, you want to come, you want to affiliate, you want to cuddle, you want to get close to. And men and women both get a dose of oxytocin when they're stressed. So Taylor is scratching her head saying, well, wait a minute, why would women do it one way and men do it another? She found out something very important. The man's testosterone negates the effects of the oxytocin. He does not have the same need to cuddle and to get close to. The woman's estrogen amplifies the oxytocin. She really wants to cuddle. So again, this is a split that happens between us. And it may very well be that some men have more of the oxytocin, some women have more of the testosterone. Who knows? But in general, when you look at the big piles of things, more women are going to affiliate. They're going to move towards other people. And more men are going to move into either an action or an inaction. And some of this is due to their biology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I really, I'm completely with you. I want to be cuddled, you know, when I have a problem. And
It's very, very convenient for me.
he likes to cuddle. This is good.
That's right. And, you know, if Mel wants more information on this, Taylor wrote a book called The Tending Instinct, which will answer every question you could possibly have. It's a great little book, The Tending Instinct by Helen.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot her name.
Can you, when you know it again, can you write it in the event page so everybody can see
I'll
it?
remember by the time we've finished today.
Okay.
Taylor, Shelly Taylor.
No, Shelly Taylor. Okay.
Shelly Taylor, The Tending Instinct. It's a great little book.
Well,
Because she's talking about, just what we're talking about, this differentiation between us that makes us unique, makes us different.
Uh-huh.
And really, I said before, we need to learn to love the very feminine men and the masculine women and everybody in between. But a part of this is knowing about the oxytocin. Can we look at someone and see them and say, oh, their oxytocin is probably lower than mine. That's why they're doing this, and love them for who they are, rather than say, well, they're not doing it like I do it. Why is that? There's something wrong with them. This is the danger. Danger of Will Robinson.
Yeah.
If we start thinking that people are wrong because they don't do it like us, we're in trouble. The problem, of course, is that almost all the research the last 50 years has been on women. It's been largely about women and very little about men. And when the research that is done about men rarely gets to the presses, you don't see it very much. The media doesn't like it so much.
No. This brings me, to what I was about to bring up, is what to do now. Because we are learning so much about one another, but women seem to get all the press and publicity. When Boko Haram kills people in Nigeria, we hear about how many women and children died, not how many men were killed. That kind of thing.
Yes.
It boils down into all the domestic politics and just the stereotypes we see in television ads.
Yes.
The bumbling husband and the inadequate father, and the woman who comes in and fixes everything emotionally.
Yes. Yes.
So what can we do, or what do we need to do now at this point in history?
Men.
Well, I'm trying not to make women into others, and
Well, that's a really good question, and it's a very difficult one to answer. But I think in general, most people can do almost nothing because their consciousness is tied into the way things are, and their consciousness is rigid. It's stuck. Most people are asleep. Gurdjieff would say most people are sleeping. They have not woken up. But people who have meditated for a while have a better chance at seeing the world in the way it really is. And I think that one of the things we can see is that the world for centuries, maybe more, has been based on what we call Gynocentrism, which is we need to take care of women, we need to care for them, we need to keep them safe, and it's going to be at the expense of men.
Right.
That thread goes into our consciousness in a very powerful manner. This is why the media wants to study women, and they're not so interested. Look at your newspaper. Do you ever see an article about a man who is hurt or in pain? No. A man's pain is to be thrown out. It's not important. What's important is that the men take care of the women. So, and you can see it every place you look. Once you get this idea, you can see it every place. It's all over. And it's really the reason why feminism was able to take over like it did, was because they were moving along with the natural cultural meme, which was take care of women and protect women at the expense of men. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So men had prepared them for that move, in a sense.
What was that?
Men had prepared women for that move, in a sense.
Oh, we've all prepared each other. And for centuries, it was a necessity. It was something we needed to do. We didn't do this out of hurt. We didn't do this because, I'm going to oppress women, Because what we did was, we did it for survival. Ken Wilber does a talk with Warren Farrell where they talk about this very thing, and Wilber says very clearly, this whole thing is about survival. It's not about oppression. And we need to get that into our biocomputer. We need to understand that what we've done for centuries is because we needed to survive. But now we're in a place where we can rise above that. We can see it from a different perspective, a perspective where our consciousness is raised a bit.
Yeah, there is a lovely comment from Kate. She says, many people, especially women, find their security in playing the victim role, and they won't come out of this role because they sleep.
Yeah. And they come by it very honestly. Because of the gynocentrism, it's just natural for women to fall into that role. Very strong women can can fight that and say, no way, I'm not a victim, forget about it. But there's this natural thing where the husband is supposed to take care of. He's supposed to provide and protect. And if he doesn't, the government had better provide and protect. That's another story altogether.
The man doesn't have to provide and protect anymore. And so what is his role? In this at this point in history.
He may not have to provide and protect anymore, but men have three choices. Women have three also. The women can get married and have children. They can not have children. They can work full time, right? Or the women can work part time. They have multiple choices. The men have three choices: work full time, and work full time. That's it. Anything that varies from that, he's seen as suspect. Because men who are dependent in any way are seen as refuse.
So
they are dismissed if they're dependent.
Yeah.
What do you think this, with the evolution of consciousness, this might change?
I think it's
another question. Yeah, another question.
Look at Wilber and Farrell. I mean, they both understand this in a very different, potent sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because both of them have worked on their own consciousness for years.
Yeah.
They're able to see things clearly, not from the gynocentric piece that's woven into us, that says this is the way we should be. It's very powerful stuff.
It is.
It takes a while to really see our own, the way we buy into that.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
It goes to the next question. You at the beginning said meditation, meditation, meditation. And it is still a little bit woo-woo for men. And there are many women who want their husbands to come with them to a meditation course or self-discovery course and something. What is the role of women to help men to grow up a little bit? And what can they not do? What they better should not do?
I think people will find their teacher when the right time is there. People will find their teacher when the right time is there. I know when I was initiated in the 70s by a master, I wanted everyone to experience the same thing. My family, my friends, everyone said, you got to do this, you got to do this. I was crazy. I was crazy. I was ready for it because that was my time.
Yeah.
They weren't ready for it. They weren't anywhere near that. Just like I'm probably not ready for something now that someone else is. So, we need to learn to love people for who they are. He doesn't want to meditate. Can you love him for who he is? He doesn't want to meditate. Bless his heart.
Mm-hmm.
You can show him how much it helps you. That might encourage him.
Mm-hmm.
So we women have to give up our role of wanting to change our husbands or our partners.
Well, I'll let you say that. I basically agree with you.
Yeah.
That a part of higher consciousness is letting go of that.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to see people for who they are and love them for who they are. Not saying, you need to be this way, that way, the other way. And men too sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that our women's need to change their mates is caused in a deep insecurity in themselves. If the other changes in the way I want them, then I'm safe, but I can control him. It's a sort of manipulation, actually. But if we let him go and be himself, he is out of my control, and so who knows what he's doing. So.
Yeah. Where that will leave you.
Where that will leave me. Alone?
Indeed. Should we tell a story about a man's way of healing through an action?
Yes, please do that.
Okay.
Because that might give people a more grounded sense of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Eric Clapton. Because I think your audience is also in Europe, is that right?
Yes.
They're going to be more likely to know Eric Clapton, and bless his heart, what a beautiful guitar player he is. Yeah. But he had the terrible thing happen. His 4-year-old child died in, I guess it was 1990 something, and he fell out of a skyscraper window and died, and Clapton was sent into a complete tailspin of grief. And in his autobiography, he talks about what he did. What he says he did was, I isolated myself. I pulled myself back. He'd been 2 years sober at the time. He said, I went to meetings, or I went and played my guitar by myself. And he says he played over and over and over again. And slowly, songs started to come to him. And during that time, it was about 3 months or so from the death until the time when the song started to come out, these 3 songs emerged. They were Tears in Heaven, which everybody knows pretty much about, My Father's Eyes, which was a song where he was thanking his son for giving him the opportunity to see his father's eyes, because he'd never met his father before. Wow. What a beautiful, beautiful tribute. And then the 3rd song was The Circus Left Town. And The Circus Left Town was about his son, because the night before his death, Clapton took his son to the circus. And the song is a message to his son that that one trip to the circus is going to have to last him a lifetime. You cannot listen to that song and not have a powerful emotional response. It is a beautiful song. I'm tearing up right now just thinking about it. It's very powerful. You can see how Clapton, putting this song together for those 3 months, 4 months, right? As he was doing that, was he thinking of his son? Yes. Was he emoting? Was he feeling the emotions as they came through? Yes. But was he connecting it with an action? Was he connecting with something that he did well, his creativity? Mm-hmm. And it was through his creative action that he was able then to feel this stuff, pass it through his body, you know, to be that emotion for a while. And now that the song is out, what happens? Clapton probably hears the song, boom, same space. Performs the song, same space. It helps him process these emotions just through the action, not through talking about it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
This is wonderful, and you know, only by speaking, you have taken me in some other space. Although I don't know the songs, can you just give a little hint how these songs go? Maybe I know them, but I'm not sure.
You probably don't know. You probably know Tears in Heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that song?
I don't know.
No.
Maybe I do, but I when I hear the melody, I might see it.
Oh, let's see. How does it go? Mark, do you know it?
Not really, no.
Oh, darn.
I just have been removed from the scene for a while.
Let's see. Da 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 da. Let's see if I can remember the refrain. Oh, darn, I can't remember it.
If not, it's not a problem. It was just.
I'm sorry about that. I'm thinking if I can remember the darn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll remember as we go on. But the other 2 songs, that one was very popular. It was like #1 on the charts for a long time. And that song, Tears in Heaven, is about will we see you again? Mm-hmm. It's not really about his grief. It's more a philosophical kind of thing. The one that's about his grief is that Circus Left Town one. Powerful, powerful song. So Clapton was using his creativity. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like Beethoven one time. You know, Beethoven's friend, a baroness, had a number of her children died in a huge accident. And Beethoven knew the kids, and he knew, of course, he loved the baroness. And everyone expected Beethoven to go over and take care of her, you know, at least go over and say hello. Beethoven said, no, I can't do that. He said he needed time to process his own stuff. He stayed by himself. He practiced in his practice room. Finally, one day, Beethoven invites her over. He says, would you like to come over? The woman comes over to Beethoven's place. She sits, he plays the piano for an hour, passionately. The woman, they didn't say a word. The woman, after an hour, got up and left. And later, when someone talked to her, she said, that was the first time I felt understood. That was the first time someone had the passion and understood what happens inside me. And Beethoven used his music, his creativity, his absolute genius to be able to connect and make that clear to her. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
We all will tend to use our strengths. You know, if you look at men's actions, oftentimes it's around either A, their strength, what they do well, like Clapton and Beethoven, but it also could be their shadow. You know, the opposite of our strength, the place where we're our worst, you know, which is where we usually play, and that pops up, and that's where we deal with the grief. So it's tricky for men. It's tricky, but it's, if you look and you have the eyes to see, you'll be able to see it. And if you don't have the eyes to see, ask him. Ask him. don't ask him, what are you feeling? That's not going to get you anyplace.
Yeah.
Ask him something like, what's the toughest thing about this for you?
Mm-hmm.
What's the toughest thing about this for you? What does that question do? First off, it assumes he's in a tough spot.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And secondly, it's kind of asking him what he is doing. What's his reaction to this? And the question is also able to be answered on many different levels. He could go on and on about all kinds of things where he could say, it's nothing really tough about this, and move on. You know? So you're giving him choice. You're giving him the ability to bail out if he wants to, which is what you want to do with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and not to expect the answer we want to have.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, this is great advice for women, and that, I think that's a fine place to end this show. To tell the truth. But you know, we've come over considerable ground, and I've heard a lot of things that are new to me, including the story about Beethoven. I didn't know that at all. And I think we need to wrap up
a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
so we want to thank the viewers in the event page,
yes.
to be there and watch the show, and also the viewers who come later and watch the replay, and leaving your comments. Already we have some wonderful comments, and we are waiting for more. And we want to thank you, Tom. It was really inspiring. I mean, I had heard some of your talks, but you really touched my heart. Thank you.
Bless your heart. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, you transmit what you are saying, and this is wonderful. And I can see why you choose this profession, to help men to go, because you have this possibility that people can have trust and follow what you I don't even say if you suggest something, but you know, this information you give in this way, it can really heal, I'm sure. And not only men, also women, who we are learning about men and about how to treat them, because we didn't know, we never knew that.
Yes. What's coming across to me from you, Tom, is this compassion you have for people wherever they are. You know, just at what point in their development and their situation are they, and accepting that, and allowing that just to be, and not to expect miracles, but to be able to ease people into new, you know, more functional places, I guess is what I'd like to say. That's nice. That's
thank you.
Thank you. And I want to talk a little bit what next week is coming up. There is Fernanda Ibarra and Jeff Clearwater, and they will talk about creating sustainable and regenerative communities. And they have a project which is called Village Lab, and they will talk about that. And I think it's a very important thing to know about how can we live in a different way together. So I invite everybody to come and watch next week's show. And at the end, I would like, unfortunately we cannot sing together. There's also in the audience, there's Kate, she is a singer, and I'm waiting for Google to make it possible that we can sing all together the same thing. But I would invite you just to sing a goodbye with us.
So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
Wonderful. And you?
I'll try to sing my father's goodbye. Goodbye. There we go.
Yeah. Okay, thank you everybody, and we see you next week, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.